Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Bet on Chicago. My name is Joey Christopoulos. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming into the show. We have a returning guest who I should have had back on a while. Oh, it's been a while, and it shouldn't be that long. I'm so excited to have him come on back to give you a little synopsis of who he is. He's coming out with a new book. It is out and available now wherever you find your wonderful books or your audio-only books too as well. The book is called Trek Within, Following Your Inner Compass. This is a publication by our guest here today, Rob Sullivan, who served as a catalyst as a successful career as a professional speaker and executive coach over the past 15 years. He's delivered workshops all over the world. He's been a repeat guest on television, and now he is a repeat guest here on Bet on Chicago. Rob, how are you today? Thank you so much for coming back on the show.
Hey, thank you for having me. Great to see you again.
It's great to see you. I think this is going to be a fantastic episode to finish out the year 2023. I want to get into a couple of different topics with you, but first, obviously, congratulations on the book, A Trek Within. And if I may ask you, I just want to get a little bit into the impetus, right? The easy softball question. But when we talk about a trek within, and when we talk about a trek or a journey in life, there's always challenges and there's always rewards. So take your pick, door number one, door number two. I just want to hear a little bit about the challenges and rewards of the journey of writing A Trek Within.
Well, the challenge was the fact that it took so long. Because like my first book, I wrote in less than 2 years. In fact, the first draft was done in a couple of weeks or months. But this one had a strangely unfinished feeling, even after I had done a lot of work around it. And I just had this feeling that there was something I hadn't yet experienced that needed to be included. And sure enough, that is exactly what happened. And there were a lot of little, signposts along the way, if you will. But it all pointed back to the fact that, everything happened in its right time. There are stories in the book that would not have been included had it been done, even a year ago. So I'm really grateful for that, because it's, the opportunity of the whole thing was just the fact that there were so many things that I was not raised to believe, but that I've come to accept. And that's really what the book is about, because every chapter has a different topic. So happy to go into as much detail as you want.
Yeah, well, I just want to stay on what you just mentioned there, because I find that really interesting. Now, obviously, I have a lot of friends, and I myself have worked in the entertainment industry for a long time. I had a close friend of mine who just recently finished a music documentary, and it took him, I believe it was 11 or 12 years to finish the project. The project is called Party Dream. I highly recommend it to anyone who's listening to this episode. But the point that I'm getting at a little bit is that, they really kind of thought that they were done with it about 6 or 7 years ago. It didn't get finished. And then as you find out in the documentary, they end up shooting more footage over the course of the last 5 years that honestly really kind of make this perfect full circle of the piece that they were trying to make. So my question for you is, when you were feeling that intuition of, gosh, this isn't finished yet, I can understand that there's a feeling of frustration. How do you balance the intuition of trying to walk that path of saying, hey, this isn't finished, I want to try and discover and see what else is out there, to be that seeker? How do you balance that with maybe the frustration of, let's just put it out already, it's done?
Yeah, I love that question, because it is a challenge. And if I sat here and pretended I had all the answers, I'd be lying to you. But what I will say is this, that if you do have that inner voice that says, I really, there's something that here that, I need to trust, I need to just let it work itself out, versus, I'm procrastinating and I'd rather rearrange my sock drawer than actually finish the project, which is a real thing too. You've got to, the voice in your inside is the one that's going to tell you, am I playing around here, or is this a legitimate thing? And in my case, I knew it was a legitimate thing, because there were all these things that happened. In fact, the book, what turned out to be the missing chapter was a life-changing event that I had in the form of tumors a couple of years ago. But interestingly, there was another life-changing health thing that came up 3 or 4 years ago that, again, had I released the book 5 years ago when I thought I was originally going to, that wouldn't have been included. And candidly, it's one of the more powerful examples in the book, because I was literally warned in a dream I had a dream that saved my life. Let's just summarize it at that. And that was, trusting the waiting part that you were talking about before. That was when I realized, yeah, it's good that I waited, because it was such an important component of the book, even though it's only a couple of pages.
And it's so strange too, is I'm progressing in my life. I turned 40 in a couple of weeks.
Oh, happy
Um,
birthday.
Thanks. And I continue to find patience is more challenging as I'm getting older. What's up with that? Is that because of the I sometimes feel like maybe it's the outside world trying to push an expectation on me. So if I'm not receiving it in that moment, I'm getting impatient. Is that a part of the challenge too, as well, through this process?
Absolutely, because I mean, let's face it, unless we're going to live to 120, the odds are we've got as much behind us as we have in front of us.
Yeah.
And so there's that element of, okay, well, if it's going to happen, can we get on with it?
Yeah. I just want to let everybody know I'm ready.
Yeah,
So I'm ready
exactly.
to do it. So let's dive into the book, A Trek Within, Following Your Inner Compass. I'd like to open it up to you a little bit, just for our listeners out there. If you can just explain an easy introduction into what you are trying to accomplish with this book, and a little bit, you mentioned a little bit of the chapters going through it, and you mentioned a lot of the aspects, some anecdotal things about your life. Just talk to a little bit about, what do we have in store for when we open up or when we listen to A Trek Within.
Okay, cool. So it is not, although it's autobiographical, it's not an autobiography. In fact, there are stories and anecdotes from at least 80 different people in the book to demonstrate that this is not just about me. There are things that happen to me, but it's not about me. Um, and so really what it is it's a collection of, for me, the journey was being able to look back and see all of these things that lined up in my past that prepared me for the challenges that I'd been facing in the last couple of years,
Mm.
and things that I would never necessarily have expected. And so each chapter covers a different topic. So there's a chapter on dreams. There's a chapter on the guidance that we receive from other places. There's a chapter on synchronicities, and the value of paying attention to that. And so each of these things built on each other, and it really, alternative medicine as an example. There's another chapter in that, in Reiki, hands-on healing, that sort of thing. And these are things, like I said, I was not raised to believe in that. My dad was a doc at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. I'm not a poster child for alternative medicine. But the reality, it was something, believe it or not, my dad actually did believe in, and he supported 100% me following that path and pursuing that, because it was just something that, well, first I was led to do it, but also, like the very first diagnosis that I got was narcolepsy, which is a sleep disorder. And after I went through the traditional paths of Western medicine, they said, basically they threw up their hands and said, you're going to be on Prozac and Ritalin for the rest of your life, and we can't do anything more than treat the symptoms. And I said, forget it. I need a better answer. And I found a better answer, but there were all these, it was what led up to those kinds of things, the tumors, the life-saving dream I talked about, things that I wouldn't have paid attention to if I hadn't had these signposts along the way.
I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase this. And as we've noticed over the last 3 or 4 years, um, I'm not asking you about what is right and what is wrong.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, are we having healthy enough conversations when it comes to the contrasts of mainstream medicine and alternative medicine? Because I feel like that there's a lot of things that go beyond the science aspect that kind of get baked into these conversations. And as you mentioned, I think the idea is whenever someone has a malady or a problem, you want to seek out the solution, whatever that may be. But are we having enough healthy conversations about it to make it accessible to people that maybe need whatever treatment it takes, right? Whatever treatment it takes is what we should be following.
Yeah, I don't think so. And to answer an earlier question that you posed that I didn't get to, which was the whole idea of, I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything.
Right.
I'm not going to miss a meal. I'm not trying to start a new religion. I just know that there's some things that have really, really enhanced my life and have deepened my appreciation for the world around us. And it's that kind of thing that I want to open people's eyes to. And so, as a very specific example to answer your current question, are we having enough conversations? I'm very open to all this, obviously, and people know that I'm open to it, and I've been very public about it. But what was interesting is take a really simple thing, not one of the life-threatening things that I had, but a very simple thing. A couple of years ago, when my dad was dying, I had a nerve issue in my hand, and everybody's like, "Oh, it's your neck. It's your neck. If your hand is tingling, it's your neck." And I was inclined to go along with that, and I went to neurologists and all this stuff. But the interesting thing is, I had a meeting with a friend of mine who is a gifted intuitive, and I asked her. I said, and her first reaction was, "I'm not intended to give medical information." I said, "Okay, I get that." I said, "I'm not doing this in lieu of a doctor's appointment, but is there anything that I should know that would help me get it treated?" And she said, she thought about it and she checked in with her guide and she said, "Yeah, it isn't your neck at all. It's your shoulder blade." And so I passed that information along to the neurologist, to the chiropractor, and interestingly, to my physical therapist at the time, who was very open to intuitive. She and I used to talk about psychics all the time. They all ignored it because of the source. Now, if I had said, my mistake was revealing the source of the information. But why is this important? Because a year later, or 9 months later, I'm sitting at the physical therapist and they're like, "Hey, your insurance is running out. We haven't made the progress on your case that we thought we would. We need to do an evaluation." And this is a different PT. And so she starts evaluating me and she rubs my shoulder right here. And she goes, "What do you get when I do that?" And I said, "Well, I've got a knot there, but I've always had it." She goes, "It's not a knot, it's a bone." And I said, "I didn't think there was a bone there." She goes, "There isn't supposed to be." Come to find out, my shoulder blade was out of place. That's what was causing the nerve issue. And so, all of these medical professionals ignored. I told them where to look and they didn't do it because of the source of the information.
Right. And look, I think we're being both very firm about not advocating that we know exactly where the right and the wrong is, or what the path is. I think the point is that to have these conversations and to have them be healthy, it allows people to at least try and exhaust all different avenues. And for your particular case, it led you down an avenue that found a solution.
Yeah, totally.
So, if that's sometimes what it takes, that's a part of me that kind of worries it a little bit about. I want to ask you, if I may, if this spoils the book, that's okay. What was the dream that saved your life?
Okay. So a couple of years ago, I was working out at Eastman Club. I'm in the gym. I leave, and then I started to get a cramp right here. And I, because I work out all the time, I just thought it was a regular muscle spasm.
Sure.
I go to I had an appointment with the doctor who operated on me last week for an injection in my ankle. And I said, "Hey, I got a question for you." I said, "If my ankle is bone on bone," I said, "why is the pain partway up my leg?" He goes, "That's referral pain." He goes, "Like if you were having a heart attack." I was like, "Oh, okay." So then I go later in the morning, my dentist sent me to an endodontist for a 360 x-ray because he was concerned about a tooth that he couldn't quite tell if it was cracked. And the guy asked me, he goes, "Does that tooth hurt?" And I said, "That one does not, but the one immediately below it will occasionally hurt from time to time." And he looks at me and he goes, "That's referral pain." I'm like, "Okay, why am I hearing about referral pain twice in one day?" Oh, but what had happened before all that was I had awakened that morning from a dream. And in the dream, I'm standing on the edge of a ocean. There's a lifeguard next to me, and the water is really rough, but there had just been a storm, obviously. And it was kind of calm now at that point. And he telepathically communicates to me. He goes, "Don't be fooled by the calm. It's going to get worse." And then he turns around and he starts running at top speed. And I'm like, "Well, okay, if the lifeguards are running away from the water at top speed, I am too." So I turn around and I just about catch up to him. There's a huge wall to my left, and it's like 50 feet high. It's got the big bricks, like the cinder block things, and they're huge. And then in between them, you can see seaweed. By the time I caught up to the wall, this wave crashes into the wall. It blocks 90% of the water, and 10% gets through, and you can see seaweed on the other side. So I wake up, and I'm really like disturbed by the dream because I'm like, what was that all about? Especially the telepathy part, because that doesn't happen in dreams very often. And so as I go through the day, this thing calmed down. But then I had a client meeting in the afternoon. I got up and I was going to go to Gringo's for shrimp tacos. I'm walking up the street and this came back. And I'm standing on the corner of Grand and Ogden. And I know it sounds very dramatic, but it's exactly what happened. And when it came back, the dream came immediately to me. And I checked in with my intuition. I just silently looked up and said, is this something I need to get checked, or can I go get my shrimp tacos? And the immediate answer came back, you need to get that checked right now. So I jump in an Uber, go to the urgent care. I explained that I was having an issue and that I wanted to get it checked. And they brought me right in. She looks at me and she goes, your heart's not getting enough oxygen. You need to go to the ER right now. And when I got there, they said the left wall of my heart, the artery was 90% blocked. Exactly like the dream. The wall was on the left and it was blocking 90% of the water. I kid you not, if I had not had that dream, I would have ignored this. I had more discomfort walking around on my ankle than I had from this. This was nothing. I mean, people talk about crippling chest pain, zero. And they looked at me, and at the time I was in much better shape. The cardiologist he had all his students with him, and they were very open to the dream and the story. He wanted people to hear it. And they're like, wow, this guy's got no risk factors. And somebody's like, wow, he's got stomach muscles. And it was like, they couldn't believe that I had just had a heart attack.
Oh my gosh. That's incredible. It is also incredible when, you have those dreams and, even after 30 seconds, the details dissipate, right? But then you have those sometimes that are so visceral, or the imagery is so powerful that it hangs with you in these sequences. Are you a guy that likes to, do you dive in? Do you interpret dreams? Because I dream about oceans, and I have dreams about tidal waves all the time. And there is stress and there's tension involved, but I'm not stressed. So what is it about the ocean? Do you know?
I don't know exactly. Well, I do know that water in general tends to represent emotion. So I was a springboard diver in high school, and I've had a lot of dreams about diving. And one of the people who helped me with that said, she goes, you're literally not diving into your emotions. That's what that dream is all about. Because I was having a hard time getting off the board. In the ocean in general, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know how to interpret dreams to that level. But there are, if you Google it, there's actually some interesting information, and a lot of it does tend to correspond. Sometimes if you find it's contradictory, just trust your intuition and say, which of these resonates, which makes the most sense.
Right.
But that's interesting that you have that, and good that you're paying attention to it, because that's exactly what the book is about, is to try to get people. At the end of every chapter, I have a little section called Putting It Into Practice. And it asks questions like that, about, are you paying attention to this? What signs have you seen? When you have dreams, do you have recurring dreams? That kind of, those kinds of questions to get people to think about it.
Yeah. When I have a specific recurring dream, and I think it's just, I think it leans towards the tendency of my grander traits as my personality. And I just try and kind of work through there. But again, I don't really know what they mean all the time. And the ocean is always usually involved in them.
What's up, folks? Anthony Armstrong here, former NFL receiver and host of Believe in Commanders. And with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League. It's a league specifically created for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or league. Now, if you need help making those selections, you want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players, you can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Now, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in on daily fantasy sports. You pick 2 or more players, choose more or less in whatever statistical category, and then you rack in the winnings up to 25x on your cash on your DFS picks. Make your way over to prizepicks.com/believe and use the code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for a first deposit match up to $100. You must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details. Pick more or pick less. It's that easy. Prize Picks.
When business challenges rise, so do we. Because hey, kuningi. Luckily, Bidvest Bank is a bank built out of business. So, customizable services come naturally. And once we get to know you, your ambitions, and the seasons of your business, we can tailor the efficiencies and solutions that help turn your income into the outcome your business needs. Visit bidvestbank.co.za to learn more. Bidvest Bank. Banking built for your business. An authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
So my big question for you with this and through the journey of you writing A Trek Within, following your inner compass, you can get available anywhere now. And you can also get available audio only through Amazon and other channels too as well. So my biggest question for you is, as we're walking towards the end of 2023, we're walking into 2024. I'll be honest with you. Again, I'm a generation that kind of grew up through the 90s. I got the internet introduced to me at a bit of a formative age, but I lived many, many years without it. So when you're talking about intuition, dialing into it, focusing on it, recognizing it, and acknowledging it within your own self, do you have any tips and tricks or any things that you've learned over the years through all of the noise that we have in our world today? And look, it's kind of impossible to escape. And a part of it is now embedded into how we function as a society through commerce and all different kinds of ways. So how have you been able to handle that? How do you try and remind yourself to dial into your intuition when there is just so much noise and stimulus in the world right now?
So love that as a thing to think about, because there's a couple of things that come to mind. First, literally just stopping and asking the question, like I did on that street corner that afternoon, is to often enough to be able to get, to let spirit world, if you will, know that you're open to that and that you're open to guidance, because there is a sense that you can only be helped if you ask for it. And so, the interesting thing about intuition that I've found is that the more that you pay attention to it, the more that you get signs and signals about it. It's the people who don't pay attention and ignore it who, don't get a lot, but that's because it's like a muscle that if you haven't been using it, you're not going to get it. The only two times it will lead you astray is when you're dealing with fear or greed. But generally beyond that, you can trust it, and it's getting in the habit of trusting it and then acting on it when you get it, because it's not enough to get an intuitive hit, ignore it, and go, oh, wow, I really should have paid attention to that, because you're not exactly communicating to the universe that you're open to following it if you're not doing anything about it. It's only when you act on it that you start to get more of it.
When you mention fear specifically, do you find that maybe fear lends itself to inaction, or fear sometimes lends itself to is misaction even the correct word? You know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah. Interesting. Let me think about that. My thought, and again, I don't claim to have all the answers, but I would say that it's probably more inaction, because you probably heard the acronym FEAR, and I didn't create this, but I like it. Fear means false evidence appearing real. And so we're giving credence to something that we really shouldn't in most cases. And if you think about it, I mean, it doesn't have to be a life-threatening example. I mean, we do it all the time. You talk yourself out of asking a pretty woman out, because you're afraid that she's going to reject you or whatever. There's all kinds of things that we do where that may not have been the case at all, but we convinced ourselves that was, that somehow we were putting ourselves at risk, when in fact that wasn't true.
A couple more questions here for Rob Sullivan here on Bet on Chicago. We're here talking about his brand new book coming out, A Trek Within, Following Your Inner Compass. I think for someone that's looking into walk into the new year, and if they're looking to either make some changes in their life or even better, refine the things that are great about them, make them sharper and more efficient, I think this is a fantastic book to pick up. Rob, when we're talking about that, I want to ask you, is there a section of the book that maybe we haven't talked about that gives you the most pride, or maybe warms your heart, or and it doesn't even have to be from you. Maybe there's an anecdote that something happened to you that someone gave you the gift of feeling that way. When you look at the large swath of the book, is there a section there that lights up to you?
Yeah, there's a couple, but the one that comes to mind, and thank you for asking that, is that there's on the section where I talk about angels, and the angels that come into our lives, and there's they come in a lot of different ways. The one that it's not that I'm proud of it, but I love the fact that I had the experience. I was a volunteer at Children's Memorial Hospital in Chicago for 34 years, from junior year of high school until just a couple of years ago when I moved out of the country. And there were a couple stories in there about, and obviously I had to change the names and the details for confidentiality reasons, but there were a number of little kids who had a really big impact on me, because they were some of the first little kids that I'd worked with there who had died while they were, because of their, conditions and whatnot. And there was one little girl, and I still light up when I think about her. and her name was Annabelle, and she came to me like literally the day she died. I knew it because I was walking up Fullerton, and I still remember, it was a beautiful afternoon. It was like 3 p.m, and I felt like I'd just gotten this huge hug. And the message that seemed to be coming through was, "Thank you for being my friend." And when I got to the hospital that week, my supervisor looked at me and she said, "We got some sad news this week." I said, "Yeah, she died, didn't she?" And she's like, "Yeah, how did you know that?" I said, "It was Saturday around 3 o'clock." And she looked at me with wide eyes and she said, "How did you know that?" It's like, I just knew.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. Well, so I think this kind of leads to the final topic that I wanted to get involved with you, because you're bringing up something that, look, Rob, this is the second time you've been on my show. You know what I mean? We haven't shook hands or had a cup of coffee together or anything like that. But honestly, I love your energy, man, and I love your social media presence. Gives away a couple of things. The first one is, I think that you are a fantastic supporter of others. I think that you constantly think of others when they're either going through trials or tribulations or through success. And as you mentioned, you ask people to help visualize and positively influence through energy other people's lives and other people around you. And I greatly appreciate that about you. I think that's so wonderful. And my last topic is, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I personally, if we want to, I have a spiritual side. If we want to work on the religious side or whatever, I kind of have some elements of Buddhist tendencies. I try and accept the concept of, no matter what, every day of your life, you have to live through a version of suffering, right? Like, I mean, honestly, like taking a poop is a version of suffering. Like, if I had my choice, I wouldn't do it every day, and yet I do. And I've been working through this concept, and I want to ask you about it. And I think a lot of people talk about it. My friends in my life talk about, we wake up sometimes feeling very stressed. Stress hits us sometimes from the moment that we open up our eyes in the day. And I can only imagine for other people out there with families, 2 jobs, all sorts of different kinds of struggles and strifes in life. And I've been reading about something that's called like a recognized gate. And the recognized gate is that if you can recognize that you're stressed in the morning, it is actually the pathway that opens up towards focus. And you have to walk through that gate whether you like it or not. So you could either stand outside banging on the gate, being mad that you're stressed, or you can't. So my question for you is, how do you try and deal with stress in your life? How do you try and create that balance a little bit? And how do you attach what you consider intuition to try and work through different stresses that I think a lot of people feel in life? Are there any tips that maybe you try and employ in your life that other people can listen to and maybe employ into theirs?
Yeah, I'll tell you, the best advice I ever got was not from an intuitive or alternative healer or anything like that. It was from a regular old psychologist that my dad sent me to one time. And I still remember, I was at the beginning phases of building my business and my entrepreneurial journey. And I had a bit of a victim mentality going on because I was stressed. I was stressed about money. I was stressed about a lot of different things. And he looked at me and he said something I never forgot. And it's a reminder that I give myself when I'm feeling stressed. Because he said, Rob, he said, your issue is, he said, when you get like this, he said, you need to look in the mirror and say, I chose this. And he's exactly right. I chose the entrepreneurial journey. I could have stayed at Leo Burnett and worked in advertising. I could have stayed at the Board of Trade and continued to be a trader. I could have done all that, but I made a different choice. And once you make that choice, you can't turn around and say, oh, it's not going my way. Life sucks, because you're whining. In that moment, it's like, okay, I chose it. And then I found that really empowering, because then the next question is, okay, well, what do I do about it? I'm here. I wanted this. I do want this, reaffirming that I want it. And that's a key thing, because it was, even this is just reminding me of, I had seen an interview with a couple that had been married for 65 years. And somebody asked them, to what do you attribute the success of your marriage? And they looked at the interviewer and said, every day we wake up and we choose to be together. And I love that, because it doesn't always have to be about stress, but life is a choice. Are you sitting there saying, I chose it? Or are you sitting there saying, this sucks, and what am I going to do? Because that, to me, is the single biggest thing, because it really got me out of the complaining mode. And it's still, I still slide into it. I'm not pretending I don't. But when I get there, that's how I get out.
Yeah, and I love that you say that, because I feel like sometimes there's a part of it where the whininess in me goes, well, why do I have to feel so stressed? You know what I mean? Why am I being bothered with this version of stress when really it's a byproduct of the things that I love and that I'm striving and trying to do. And you just have to work through that byproduct. And I've been thinking about walking through that gate every single day. And let's get on to the focus. Let's get on to the fun. And let's move off of this stressful thing that I'm feeling in the morning. That's how I'm trying to work through it personally.
I love it. I think that's great. Yeah. And I love the concept of a gate because that has the forward motion attached to it. It doesn't have I'm sitting here on my sofa on my hands hoping things get better.
Yeah, it's like leaving the stress outside. You're walking into your own amusement park of your own life, and you stay outside, you wake up outside of the gate, and you have to choose to walk through. And that's where the stress lives out there. I guess that's the kind of the concept that's going on there. Rob Sullivan, before you go, I just want to hear any final thoughts about a trek within following your inner compass that you'd like to give out to our audience, and of course. If I missed any particular way that they can go out and get the book, because I also highly recommend it. And congratulations, it's awesome.
Oh, thanks, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think there's so much I could say, but what I'd leave it at is, first of all, for your listeners, trust your intuition. For some of you, it may speak to you, great, and if it doesn't, don't force yourself to wade through something that don't suffer voluntarily. What I would also, to get a sense of whether that's going to work, go to a Trek Within. There's a sample chapter that's free, and you can listen to the audio free. A sample of the audio, so you can check that out, and then ask your intuition. This is something I want to give a shot to.
I love it so much. Rob, are you a sports fan?
I am. More so just because my great granddad and great uncle played ball for the White Sox.
Oh, so you're a baseball guy?
Yeah.
Any thoughts on Shohei Ohtani getting $700 million?
No, good for him is all I can say. Yeah. Wow. I'm happy to help him spend it. Get stuck.
Yeah, that's a hell of a compass right there. That's a pretty good one. $700 million. Rob Sullivan, thank you so much for coming on to Bet on Chicago. The book is called A Trek Within, Following Your Inner Compass. Please go out and check it out today. I think also as an audio only, it's a great way to get through the holidays too as well. It's a great stocking stuffer. It's a great gift. And even beyond that, even when the holidays are over into 2024, I can't imagine a scenario where it wouldn't be able to be helpful. Rob, man, so great to see you. I'm sorry it's been such a long time, man. We have to do this again. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I own part of that because think about all the delays I had with the book. So,
well, that's not going to be a prerequisite next time. And,
cool. I appreciate that.
And much health and happiness to you and yours to the end of this year. I know you just had a surgery. You told me before the podcast you're feeling good, but again, continued health to you and yours in 2024.
You as well. Thank you, sir.
Today's episode is presented by BetOnline.ag. 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit when you use promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV. Thank you so much for tuning in. We might have one more episode coming before the end of the year. Happy holidays, everyone. Be well, be safe. Please be good to each other, especially during this time of year. We will be back soon. And remember, when in doubt, always and always bet on Chicago.